This is your host Danny, and this is a new episode from our series, The Story of Us. In this gripping episode of The Story of Us, we delve into the harrowing experiences of a survivor from Hiroshima, a city forever changed by the atomic bomb in 1945. Through a touching narrative, we follow the protagonist as he navigates the surreal devastation of his once vibrant community, grappling with grief, loss, and the shocking news of another bomb dropping on Nagasaki. As he searches for meaning in a world turned upside down, we witness the power of human resilience and the bonds formed in the wake of tragedy. Join us on this emotional journey as we honor the lives lost and celebrate the enduring spirit of hope that rises from the ashes of destruction. Now, before we start, let me remind you that if you want to gain access to our extensive back catalog, consider becoming a premium subscriber on Apple Podcasts or Patreon. You can find the links in the description of the episode. And don't forget to visit EnglishPlusPodcast.com for even more content, including articles, in-depth studies, and our brand new audio series now available in your English Plus Podcast shop. And my friends, let me just remind you that this story is written by Danny B. Phoenix, which is my pseudonym, of course, for everything creative. And I also wrote the music that you're going to listen to in the background. And there's a song at the end of the story, so stick around to listen to the song, which is called Ashes and Light. And now let's start with this new story from The Story of Us, Hiroshima. There are some mornings that begin like any other, with the sun climbing lazily into the sky and the world waking up, unaware that it will never be the same again. Hiroshima was like that, a city alive with the hum of everyday life, children running through the streets, shopkeepers preparing for the day, the faint sound of a radio playing a favorite tune. The air was warm, the sky clear, and for a brief moment, everything felt as it always had. But there are moments when history arrives uninvited. It crashes into our lives like a wave of fire, leaving nothing behind but silence and ash. This is the story of a survivor. A story of a man who lived through the unimaginable, who walked through the ruins of a life that disappeared in an instant. His name doesn't matter, because he could be anyone. And yet, he's everyone who survived that day. Everyone who felt the weight of the sky falling down. The earth itself torn apart by something so monstrous that it defied understanding. In the blink of an eye, Hiroshima became a memory of what was. And in that silence, where once there was life, he stood among the ruins, asking himself the same question over and over. How does one go on living when the world has already ended? This is his story, not just of survival, but of finding meaning in a world where hope and despair walk hand in hand. A world where the ground beneath your feet is no longer familiar, and the sky above you holds no promise of safety. Let me take you to that moment where the world split in two. Let me take you to Hiroshima. The day started like any other. I woke up to the sound of cicadas buzzing in the heat, their song blending with the soft murmurs of the city coming to life. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden light through the window. I stretched, feeling the warmth on my skin, and for a moment, I allowed myself to think that today would be no different from any other. There's a certain comfort in routine, in the small rituals of daily life. I liked how the air smelled in the morning, a mix of dew and rice cooking in the distance. I liked the way the streets felt just before they filled with people, a quiet that belonged only to the early risers. It was peaceful. I could hear children laughing somewhere in the distance, and it made me smile. I went about my day as if nothing in the world could change. My hands worked quickly, automatically, going through the motions I'd done 1,000 times before. Everything was familiar, safe. The sounds, the smells, the rhythm of the city around me, All of it was a kind of reassurance that life, though unpredictable in its small ways, was predictable enough. But I remembered just before it happened, there was something, a stillness, a moment when the world seemed to pause, as if it were holding its breath. It was subtle, the kind of thing you only notice in hindsight, a calm that settled over everything, pressing down like the air before a storm. I didn't pay attention to it then. I didn't know how I could have known. I was thinking about the day ahead, about small things like what I would eat for lunch or what errands needed to be run. Ordinary thoughts in an ordinary life. And then, in an instant, that ordinary life was gone. The sky, it changed in a way I had never seen before. One moment, the sun was climbing, the air thick with summer heat, and the next there was a light brighter than anything I could imagine, as if the sun itself had fallen from the sky. I didn't understand what was happening. No one did. There wasn't time to react, to scream, to run. It all happened in a single breath. 1 second, I was standing there, and the next, the world exploded around me. The blast, it was like the air itself had turned against us, ripping through the streets, tearing buildings apart like paper, shattering glass with a force that seemed impossible. I was thrown to the ground, the force knocking the wind out of me. For a moment, I thought I was dead. How could anyone survive something like that? But somehow, I was still breathing, though the air burned my lungs and the ground beneath me felt like it was on fire. I couldn't see. The light had blinded me, left me disoriented, and when I tried to stand, the world spun in every direction. The sound? God, the sound was deafening. It wasn't just an explosion. It was a roar, a scream, the earth itself groaning in agony. And then, silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong, like the world had been muted. My ears were ringing, my head pounding, and all I could hear was the distant echo of destruction, the crackle of fires that has ignited out of nowhere. I forced myself to open my eyes, and what I saw, I still don't have words for it. The city, the place I had known my entire life, was gone. Just gone. Buildings that had stood for decades were reduced to rubble. Smoke rising from the skeletons of what once was. The streets were littered with debris, with pieces of lives scattered in every direction. I remember standing there, staring at the ruins of everything I knew, and feeling a hollow emptiness inside me. How could this be real? How could all of this be gone in the blink of an eye? I thought I was dreaming, trapped into some kind of nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. And as I stumbled through the wreckage, through the screams and the smoke, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. In the moments that followed, I became a ghost wandering through the remains of my life. The air was thick with smoke, mingling with the acrid scent of burning wood and the metallic tang of despair. I felt as if I were moving through a dream, each step heavy with disbelief, my heart pounding like a drum in a silent march. The streets that once buzzed with life were now a graveyard of memories. I stumbled over debris, broken glass, twisted metal, the remnants of homes that had held laughter and love. My mind was racing, grappling with the chaotic reality around me, searching for something, anything that felt familiar. But all I found was ruin. There were people everywhere, yet it felt as though I was utterly alone. I saw faces, some twisted in agony, others vacant, lost in the horror of it all. I heard their cries, mingled with the cries of the wounded and the dying, and my heart ached for them, for the stories left untold, for the lives that had been snuffed out like candles in a storm. I searched for my loved ones, my heart hammering with each step. Where are they? I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the chaos. I pushed through the crowd of survivors, each face a reflection of the shock that coursed through my veins. We were all bound by this shared nightmare, but in that moment, I felt like an island, isolated in my fear, in my uncertainty. As I wandered through the debris, I came across a child, perhaps 6 or 7, sitting amidst the rubble. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with ash, but it was his eyes that struck me the most. They were wide, glassy, devoid of understanding, mirroring my own terror. I knelt beside him, searching for comfort in his gaze, but he didn't speak. He just stared ahead as if the world around him had already faded into nothingness. My heart broke for him, for all the children, for the innocence that had been shattered along with our city. I wanted to pull him close, to tell him that everything would be all right, but how could I promise that when I too felt as though I was unraveling? I took his small hand in mine, but he didn't respond. He remained still, trapped in a moment that would haunt him forever. Hours felt like days as I wandered, seeking out familiar faces among the chaos. I passed through streets that were once filled with laughter, now echoing with the groans of the wounded and the whispers of the lost. I called out names, friends, neighbors, family, but the only response was the wind, carrying away the last fragments of our world. And then in the distance, I saw a figure, a familiar shape. My wife, crumpled against the remains of what used to be our home. My heart raced as I ran toward her, fear and hope clashing within me. I knelt beside her, my hands trembling as I brushed her hair away from her face. She looked up at me, eyes filled with confusion and pain, and in that moment, I knew we were both survivors of this nightmare, bound together by the horror we had endured. But as we embraced, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on us. The reality of our loss washed over me like a cold wave, and I realized that we were only beginning to understand the magnitude of what had happened. The city we loved was gone, and with it, the life we had built together. In the silence that followed, I felt a sharp edge of grief slicing through my heart. We stood there, surrounded by the ruins of our existence, holding each other tightly, both knowing that the path ahead would be fraught with pain and uncertainty. But in that moment, we were alive, and somehow, amidst the ashes, we would find a way to carry on. In the days that followed, as we sifted through the rubble and grief of Hiroshima, a darkness loomed over our hearts, an insidious dread that whispered, "What comes next?" We tried to piece our lives back together, but the threads felt frayed, unraveling with every passing moment. The world outside our shattered city continued to run, but within us, time stood still, caught in a cycle of despair. I remember the day the news reached us. It came like a thief in the night, stealing whatever fragile hope we had managed to cling to. Another bomb had fallen, this time on Nagasaki. I stood among the ruins, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet as the weight of those words settled in my chest. Another bomb. How could this be? My heart felt as though it had been ripped from my chest, leaving behind a hollow ache. I could barely comprehend it. Another city, another group of people, another life lost in a flash of blinding light. I had thought Hiroshima was unimaginable, a reality I could never have fathomed. And yet here we were, forced to confront the stark truth that the world has spiraled into madness. I watched as others reacted, faces pale, mouths agape in disbelief. Some wept, their tears mixing with the dust of our broken city, while others stood in stunned silence, unable to process the enormity of what had just happened. It felt surreal. How could a world that had just witnessed such devastation do this again. I felt anger rising within me, a fire igniting where there had only been grief. I turned to my wife, searching her eyes for answers, for a flicker of understanding in the darkness. But she too was lost in her own despair, struggling to make sense of a world that no longer made sense. How can this destruction continue? I thought, the question reverberating in my mind. I wanted to scream, to demand that the world stop and recognize the lives being torn apart. But who would listen? The hands that unleashed such horror were beyond our reach, and the echoes of our pain fell silent against the vastness of indifference. As I walked through the streets of Hiroshima, I felt the shadows of Nagasaki creeping in, an ominous reminder that we were not safe. The fear gripped me tighter, a chain I couldn't shake. The idea that such devastation could be repeated, that life could be so casually extinguished, filled me with dread. I found myself staring into the distance, at the horizon where the sun set behind the clouds, a reminder of a beauty that felt unattainable. I thought of the families in Nagasaki, of the children who played in the streets, of the lives that would be forever altered in an instant. How many more stories would be silenced? How many more hopes would be shattered? In that moment, I understood that we were all connected, woven together by the same thread of humanity, and yet the world felt more divided than ever. I grieved for Nagasaki, for the lives lost and the future snuffed out, but I also grieved for myself and for those around me, for the unbearable burden of survival that had been thrust upon us. I looked at my wife, her face drawn with exhaustion and sorrow, and I knew we had to keep moving forward, even as the shadows closed in around us. We had to find a way to honor those who had been lost, to give meaning to the chaos that had enveloped our lives. So we walked on, through the ruins of Hiroshima, with the specter of Nagasaki looming ever larger in our minds, trying to find a way to navigate this new reality, one that had become an unending nightmare, but one where, even in darkness, we could still seek the light. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into an eternity as we wandered through the remnants of our lives, searching for a sense of purpose amid the ashes. Hiroshima was now a landscape of sorrow, a place where laughter had been replaced by silence, where memories clung to the air like a thick fog that refused to lift. Each corner we turned held a piece of our past, a ghost of what once was, and yet the world kept moving, indifferent to our suffering. We struggled to find normalcy in the chaos. I remember waking up one morning, the sun creeping through the cracks in the walls of what remained of our home. I looked at my wife who lay beside me, her brow furrowed in sleep, and felt an overwhelming urge to hold her close. We were alive, yet it felt as though we were merely existing, shadows of our former selves. The mornings began with a desperate attempt to restore some semblance of routine. We gathered what little supplies we could find, canned food, clothes, anything that had survived the blast. It was in these small acts of survival that I found a flicker of hope, a reminder that life persisted even in the face of unimaginable loss. But hope felt fragile, like a butterfly caught in a storm, flitting just out of reach. As we worked to rebuild our lives, I became painfully aware of the countless faces around me, families searching for loved ones, children wandering alone, the elderly looking lost in a world that had forgotten them. We were all in this together, bound by our shared trauma, yet so profoundly isolated in our grief. Every day I watch people struggle with their emotions, some consumed by anger, others lost in despair. I wanted to reach out, to comfort them, but how could I offer solace when I felt so hollow myself? I was filled with questions, and the answers eluded me like smoke in the wind. How do you find meaning when everything you once cherished has been stripped away? In the quiet moments, I sought solace in the memories of my life before the bomb. I closed my eyes and pictured our home, the warmth of the sun filtering through the windows, the smell of my wife's cooking wafting through the air, the laughter of children playing in the streets. Those memories became my refuge, a sanctuary I could return to when the weight of the world grew too heavy. Yet even as I clung to those moments, I felt the tug of reality pulling me back. I realized that while I could hold on to the past, I had to find a way to move forward. We had to honor the lives lost by living, by remembering them not just in grief, but in hope. So I began to gather the survivors. We came together in the ashes, forming a community bound by our shared experiences. We told our stories of love, of loss, of survival, each tale a thread woven into the fabric of our new reality. I watched as we began to heal, slowly but surely, as we found strength in one another. In those gatherings, we laughed through our tears, we cried through our laughter. We found solace in the connections we forged, and for the first time since the bomb fell, I felt a glimmer of hope. It was fragile, but it was there. A reminder that even in the darkest times, the human spirit could rise. As the sun set on Hiroshima every evening, casting a warm glow over the ruins, I would close my eyes and listen to the laughter of children echoing in the distance. I knew that they were our future, a future built on resilience and love. In that laughter, I found my purpose, my reason to continue. We were not just survivors. We were the bearers of stories, the guardians of memories, and together we would rebuild. And so I walked on, through the rubble of my past, toward a future yet unknown. I would carry the weight of my loss with me, but I would not let it define me. I would honor those who had been lost by embracing life, by finding meaning in the moments we shared, no matter how small. In the heart of destruction, I would seek the light.
The sky fell down without a sound. The earth was torn, we're lost, we're found. In silent streets, the shadows cry. The world we knew, a distant sky. But from the ashes we will rise, with broken hearts and open eyes. Where darkness lingers we will fight, to find the hope within the night. The sun still climbs, though none can see what once was whole. Gather pieces, hand in hand, together here we make our stand. But from the ashes we will rise, with broken hearts and open eyes. Where darkness lingers we will fight, to find the hope within the night.
As we step away from the ashes of Hiroshima and the survivor's harrowing tale, we're left with a question that lingers in the silence. How does one move forward after witnessing the unimaginable? It's easy to feel lost in the weight of such stories, to be overwhelmed by the scale of destruction and the depth of human suffering. Yet even in the darkest moments of history, there's something powerful that refuses to be snuffed out. A quiet resilience, a determination to live on no matter the cost. What we heard today isn't just about the destruction of a city. It's about the endurance of the human spirit. It's a reminder that life, fragile as it may be, continues to find a way. Amidst the devastation, people still stood up, they rebuilt, and they carried the weight of their memories forward. The story of Hiroshima isn't just a tale of survival. It's a testament to how humanity wrestles with the meaning of life when everything has been stripped away. In that moment when the world split in two, the survivors were faced with a choice: to be consumed by the darkness or to search for light in whatever form it may come. And perhaps that's the lesson we're left with today. When history confronts us with unimaginable loss, it's not just about remembering the destruction. It's about remembering the hope, the resilience, the simple yet profound truth that life continues. For us, reflecting on Hiroshima is not just about looking back at a moment in time, but about carrying forward the stories of those who lived through it. Their pain, their loss, but also their strength and will to rebuild remind us that even in the face of the most profound devastation, there is always a path forward. And so as we close this chapter, let us honor those lost by choosing to carry their legacy, not just as survivors, but as keepers of their stories. In remembering them, we find the strength to shape a future where the lessons of the past guide us toward a world where such moments are never repeated. And with that, my friends, we come to the end of today's episode from our series, The Story of Us. Today was about Hiroshima. I hope you liked the story, but more importantly, I hope that this story meant something to you. Because after all, that's what the entire series is all about. With that being said, this is your host, Danny. Thank you very much for your time, for listening. I will see you next time. And remember, never stop learning with English Plus.